Welcome to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash, bad voice and all. I'm here with my partner, Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. Ev's in Washington right now. Ev, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mark. Tigers coming off an interesting week of baseball where coming out of Sunday, last week we talked to everybody and, they had the off day on Monday, off day on Thursday. They had a 2-game series against the Pirates at Comerica Park. They won the first game, lost the second game, 2 completely different games, which I thought was pretty fascinating. And then in Washington, they lost 2 of 3. And that was an interesting series too, where it was like the Tigers were in it for about 6 innings in that first game. And then from that point on, the Nationals really took it to the Tigers. But the off days in between provided me some good opportunity to play golf. I got to play a little bit on Monday with my younger brother and my dad, which was a lot of fun. And then on Thursday, went up and, there's a whole family thing going on up north, and went up there and was able to play quite a bit of golf on Thursday. So I really enjoyed that before having to get back on the road and coming to Washington, D.C. But don't want to say too much about my golf game yet, other than it's not very good. Hopefully, if it gets better, we can have further discussions about that. But to kind of focus on the Tigers, it was 2-3 this week against the Pirates and the Nationals, 2 teams that coming into the season. Look, you kind of took a look at the schedule and you said, hey, look, if the Tigers can just survive and they can hang on until May 16th, when the Pirates come to town for that 2-game series, they might be all right. Because let me remind you, the Tigers' schedule to start the season was Tampa Bay Rays, Houston Astros, Boston Red Sox, Toronto Blue Jays, San Francisco Giants, Cleveland Guardians, Baltimore Orioles a couple times, Milwaukee Brewers, New York Mets, St. Louis Cardinals, Seattle Mariners. Those are all really good teams as you looked at it at the beginning of the season, especially. And some of those teams that the Tigers were able to beat, such as the Mets, they took them down, and the Cardinals, they won 2 of 3 there. Those are teams that have started to pick things up recently. But look, at the beginning of the season, you said if they can make it to May 16th and be all right, they might have a chance to go on a run just because the schedule doesn't seem as difficult, the rest of the way in May and really into June. So there was some optimism there, but as we've learned, it's probably not best to look at the schedule that way. Am I right? Because 2-5 against the Pirates and the Nationals is not really what you expected, when you came into the season.
Well, I think we had this discussion last week, and my comment was, using Baltimore as an example, let's stop schedule reading because we're not good enough to think we're going to beat anybody on any given night, no matter how good or how bad. I think I've found out about the Detroit Tigers. When they play well, they beat anyone. When they don't play well, they can lose to anyone. And I think this week's a perfect example of that. I think after 6 innings of Friday night, they took just an absolute ass beating from the Washington Nationals for the next 21 innings. The parade started with the Nationals coming back on an 8-0 lead, and the parade never stopped until the Tigers got on the bus to head to the airport till Kansas City. It was just a constant parade of Washington National base runners for 21 innings, and I don't think anyone expected that. So we're gonna go to the big 2 here in a minute and talk about some of these things, but the Tigers offense is just abysmal. Just way too many hitters not doing anything, and we're going to make that part of the big 2. But, today, Joey Wentz got singled to death in the first inning. We were talking a little bit about Joey Wentz. We're both huge Joey Wentz fans. For those of you that think he's going to Toledo, I got some news for you. They have nobody to bring up from Toledo. So I would say it's about a 90% chance he's making his next start, and they'll kind of decide what to do about it after that. But his pitches don't look quite the same. I think I described it as lacking in finish. They hit a lot of balls on the ground in the first. Unfortunately, none of them were at fielders except one play by Javi Baez that was spectacular that he almost turned into a double play. So there was a little bad luck, and it just kind of seemed to snowball after that. What'd you think today?
Yeah, it wasn't a great outing from Joey, obviously, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's back-to-back, really poor starts for him. He struggled his way along, this season so far. I mean, look, the guy has a 7.45 ERA with 14 walks and 31 strikeouts and 38 and 2/3 innings this season, Mark. I mean, that's just not good enough. That's just not going to get it done. I kind of compare it almost to the Spencer Turnbull situation, only from the standpoint of, look, the numbers aren't good. Like that's poor performance. Numerous times not being able to pitch deep into the game. On back-to-back, outings, he went 2 2/3 against Seattle on May 14th, and then now he gets into the third inning, but isn't able to get any outs, and gives up 6 runs to the Washington Nationals on 10 hits. I mean, that's just not good enough. That's just not what the Tigers need, and it totally screwed the bullpen. And this isn't a great time to screw the bullpen because you just burned through all the off days. There aren't any off days left for a little bit here. They're going to have to go, and they're playing 3 games against the Royals, and then 4 games against the White Sox, and then 3 games against the Texas Rangers. And your next off day isn't until June 1st. So that's a number of games coming up, and the bullpen's been significantly taxed here on a Sunday in Washington, D.C. And I thought that it was a perfect example of kind of what we saw, really, like you mentioned, Friday in the 6th inning. From that point on, what the Nationals did to Joey Wentz was kind of just what they did. I mean, they were pesting your side, and granted, I think the score should have been a little bit more lopsided than it was, a 6-4 final in favor of the Nats, and the Tigers were able to try to mount a comeback, and the bullpen did a good job of keeping them in, as they've done all season. Shout out to those guys because they've been great. But yeah, it was just a lot of singles. It was over and over again. We're going to put the ball in play. We're not going to strike out, and we're going to make your life miserable. And the Nationals had 18 hits, and they scored 6 runs. They were terrible with runners in scoring position. Now, so were the Tigers. Tigers were 3 for 16. Well, Tigers were 3 for 16, but guess what? The Nationals were 2 for 16. So
there you go.
Tigers caught some luck there, I would say.
Yep. All right. Well, like I said, just frustrating baseball. You'd like to think the Tigers can play better than that. They teased us for a decent stretch, but they're 10-7 now in the last 17, 5-7 in the last 12. Really haven't pitched very well outside of Erod and Lorenzen, and they're going to need to start doing better. The offense is an absolute mess. I think I also said to you today, if Riley Green doesn't hit, it really looks way worse than it is. So let's jump into the big 2, and we'll talk about some of this stuff. First question, can this team win consistently with this offense playing the way they are? Now, you wrote a great article about how they've improved their walk rate and improved the type of pitches they're looking at. But, their strikeout rate is still something to be concerned about. And to be really blunt about it, their walk percentage has not been great. And they just have way, 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 way too many guys hitting below 180 at the same time in long stretches of games. So the question, can this team win consistently with this offense?
I guess you have to define what consistently means, because as we sit here on Sunday night recording this, Tigers are 3.5 games back from first place in the American League Central. So if you're talking about hovering, right around where they are right now, and by that I mean, staying a few games back, staying in the hunt, being interesting, whatever it is, of course, that margin over time, if they continue to play this type of baseball, will separate a little bit. But if it's doing what they're doing right now, where it's a lot of inconsistency, but some good spurts, I think it's possible that they can kind of stay relevant into the summer just in that way. But it's always going to be that question of, can you give me something more? What else can we really get here? And I've been really impressed with just the way that they've kind of taken on this selective aggressive approach at the plate. Look, through May so far, the Tigers are pretty poor when it comes to drawing walks. They haven't done a great job of that, but they're tied for first place in the big leagues with a 19.5% strikeout rate. So they're not striking out, but they're also not walking. But that does mean they're putting the ball in play. So I do think that that's a lot better than where they were last season, and why they're going to be more successful moving forward, or be able to at least sustain the type of success that they're having right now, if you will. And so that's a positive for me. I think if they really want to take the next step, though, it comes down to drawing more walks. That's going to be key. Situational hitting is going to be a really big deal. You have to be able to drive in runners, when they're on base and they're in scoring position. That has improved since the beginning of the season. The Tigers they were hitting like 189 with runners in scoring position through the first 27 games. And since then, it's been more like, 230, 240, 250, somewhere in that range. And so that's been a big step forward. I think you have to even improve upon that even more, draw some more walks, but the most importantly, hit for some power. That's the thing that the Tigers have been lacking is they don't have any thump in their lineup to the point where they're able to really do damage at a consistent rate. And I think a lot of that falls onto guys like Torkelson and Green. But for what they're doing now, sure, it's sustainable to be under 500. But if they ever want to get above 500 and really make some noise, you got to hit for power. You got to draw more walks, and you got to have some clutch hitting.
I think the least of their problems are Torkelson and Green. Let me give you a few fast, down and dirty. Some recent stretches, some longer than just recent. Javi Baez is 4 for his last 33. Nick Maton, even after going 2 for 4 today, and I'm sure he breathed a huge sigh of relief as he was getting on the bus today. He's still, after the 2 for 4 with a homer, is 7 for his last 44. Matt Vierling, I think I've been pretty direct about my feelings about Matt Vierling's hitting abilities. He went 6 for his last 11, which brought his most recent stretch to a sterling 10 for 57, including the 6 for 11. You got Jakey Rogers, personal favorite, 6 for his last 53. Andy Ibanez, who was just absolutely stinging the baseball to every part of the baseball field last week, this week, 1 for 26. Jonathan Scope had a good week, 5 for 20. It's May 23rd. Jonathan Scope has 0 homers, 0 RBIs. Who we kidding now? Okay? 0 homers, 0 RBIs. We're 7 weeks into the season. We're a quarter of a way through the year. He hasn't even hit a ground out with a guy on third yet. Miguel Cabrera, and we all know, using defamatory commentary about Miguel Cabrera in front of Mark Gorash is not allowed. Yet, he's 5 for his last 35. So it's 2, 4, 6, 7 hitters who are contributing nothing. Absolutely donut. You have 13 hitters. More than half your team is just not even major league quality. So it leads me into my second question of the big two. What's it going to take to be demoted, released, or moved out of the lineup for lack of performance?
I do think the clock is ticking on certain guys. I mean, for Jonathan Scope, right? Like, I understand that he's valuable off the bench when he pinch hits against left-handed hitters or left-handed pitchers, but how many opportunities are you going to get in those situations, right? And is it really worth keeping you on the roster just for those situations where you've had, a small little bit of success? I don't think so. Nick Maton, that's a great conversation too in terms of how long does he get to stick around. Now, I do think he's been making some adjustments. Look at the fact that he isn't really swinging at pitches much. The last couple of games, he's done a really good job of keeping the bat on his shoulder, and he's drawn a handful of walks and then also gotten some pitches to hit that he's been able to drive and that he's been comfortable hitting. So I think that's a small sample of a potential adjustment. And so I think that's what it comes down to is it's kind of one, like, where's your performance at? And then 2, are you able to make adjustments? And if you're not able to make adjustments and at the big league level, that's when you got to think demotion, right? And so I think we're getting there with certain guys, Jonathan Scope, being one of those guys. I think Nick Maton's not there yet. I don't think Nick Maton is there yet. Now, I'm not saying that it's justified to keep him up here or send him down, but I do think that he has been making some adjustments, which is good to see. Now, how long does that last? Is it sustainable? We don't know. But If he's able, but if he's able to draw more walks, Mark, and get more pitches to hit that are his pitches that are either A, fastballs, or 2, pitches that are up in the zone, then good for him. Keep him around because he's going to hit. We know that if he's able to get pitches that he can hit.
Look, AJ told Nick Maton to do something, explain to a lot of times, first of all, Twitter will poison your mind because, the baseball analysis often not great. And, then you get spicy Mark Gorash, which is a nice way of saying it. And, it gets progressively more condescending for me when I see foolishness, suggested about some things. But I did try to share with everybody what's been done with Nick Maton. And I would prefer maybe if you can corroborate that. So AJ Hinch, I think, asked Nick Maton the last few games to make an investment in something and to not do something. You know what it was?
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned it even back in Cleveland in the series after it was the game after Corey Kluber threw, I think it was like 13, non-fastballs. So he threw 13 pitches to Nick Maton. All 13 were not fastballs. They were breaking balls and off-speed pitches, and Nick Maton struck out 3 times. And after that game, we had talked to AJ, and AJ had said, you don't have to swing at every, off-speed or breaking ball. Like you don't have to swing at every pitch. And lo and behold, Nick Maton is not swinging at really any pitches. It seems like it was that game in Washington in the first game of the series where he didn't swing for 13 straight pitches and then was able to get a pitch to hit, and he drove it for a single. And it was his first hit in a long time. So, yeah, the message to him was don't swing and see what happens. Well, and it's working.
I think the specific instructions were, if you can see spin, do not swing. You do not swing if you detect spin, period. And lo and behold, it was astonishing how few of the pitches were strikes. So It's something I think that will continue at least for a while. It's not going to continue that forever because what you're going to start seeing, and it's a famous trick at baseball starting from maybe age 12 and up, the easiest pitch to get a called strike on is to have your pitcher spin a curveball or any type of breaking ball. First pitch of a sequence, it's almost always going to get taken and just drop it right in there for a strike. And I would start guessing in the major leagues with advanced scouts, they will start spinning Nick Maton a breaking ball for a strike starting this series in KC. The point is,
but don't leave those up because he's still going to hit them if they're up. I think that's something that he's shown an ability to do is hit pitches that are up in the zone, regardless of what kind of pitches they are.
That's the game of adjustments. But the bottom line is Nick's going to have to learn how to hit spin. He's going to have to learn how to lay off spin that's going to hit the ground. And this is part of the process. But
that's my point, though. That's my point. When you talk about demotion or when does the guy need to go down, it's, make adjustments until you cannot make adjustments any longer. Well, and he's showing some ability to make adjustments.
Until he
might still be hurting the team, but he's learning at the big league level.
So, Maton is a question of, in the room has huge value to the team, so far beyond productivity on the field. His personality as a teammate is big, but he also cannot continue to hit 150 on the year.
That's true.
And expect to get playing time. Okay. As much as I love Jake Rogers, Jake's going to have to hit a little bit more than this. I mean, these bats are pretty terrible. He's going to have to at least start putting the ball in play occasionally. Not too worried about Miguel. I think Miguel's getting 25 to 30 at-bats a month now. I mean, a week. Not about 25. No, he's getting like 3 starts a week. He's getting about 10 to 12 at-bats a week. So about 30 to 35 a month. And if Kerry Carpenter can get healthy, he'll get even fewer at-bats because they'll figure out some things to do with that. Now, Matt Vierling, I think, AJ and I probably have a fight about that. He's probably got a longer rope than I want him to have, and there's not exactly a line to replace him. Javi Baez obviously is never coming out of the lineup, so we don't need to discuss that. I just think we have to live sometimes with Javi being a hot and cold hitter. But, they need more offensive production. And I think some people are going to be on the hot seat if they don't start getting it soon, because we're getting 2 months into the year. And, at some point in time, you got to show what you can do.
But I also think, Mark, you don't just demote a guy just to demote a guy, right? I think there needs to be somebody in Toledo that's making their presence felt, that deserves an opportunity to be up there. And we can go back and forth about if there are guys that, deserve to be in the big leagues or don't deserve to be in the big leagues. But I think, Joey Wentz is a great, case in point with that. Joey Wentz might need, a few starts in Toledo might not hurt for what he's been doing right now. But who is there to call up, right? You're not going to call up Zach Logue. You're not going to call up Reese Olson. I mean, you're not going to call up Brennan Hannafy. I wouldn't think so, at least. Those guys haven't pitched well enough to deserve an opportunity in the big leagues.
Yeah, I think their only choice, obviously, is to start Tyler Alexander, and I don't think they're in a real rush to do that. But
I think it works the same for the position players too. If you're going to send somebody down, you better bring somebody up who's going to provide some positive production and who's really banging on the door.
Well, I got a guy.
Me too.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy though.
Might be a different guy than Twitter has, but I got a guy.
Me too.
So
I think we got the same guy.
Yeah, same guy. Hit 4 homers this week. Has 9 on the year. Walks plenty. Has a giant. I asked you to see if we could acquire some data about hot zones and some things that he's doing. But one Colt Keith is absolutely torching the Eastern League right now. So OPS is, I think, damn close to 920. He's, I think, second in homers, second in RBIs, top 6 in batting average, top 5 in OPS. And, you ask, well, you sure he can hit left-hand pitching? And my answer is, Colt Keith is hitting 341, 408, 585 against left-handed pitching. Runners in scoring position, 333, 417, 846 with 5 homers. So it checks a lot of boxes there. Not too sure about his defense. I know a lot of people want Jahan to come up. But when I did a dive on Jahan, I'm going to repeat these numbers and then we can talk about this. But Justin Henry was having a hell of a good year. He's hitting 300 and, his on base is just out of control great. But in May, before today, he was hitting 224. So his slash was 224, 375, 414 for the month with 3 homers and 10 ribs. He'd walked 13 times, struck out 21. And in the last 30 days, he was at 255, 371, 397. And, you want to scout the stat line, there's the stat line. He also really struggles against left-hand pitching, believe it or not. So also am eager to hear, as we were talking about this a little bit, you and I today, and some people have told you that the difference in AA and AAA is pretty negligible. Why don't you explain to the pod listeners what the difference between AA and AAA pitching is?
No, I just think that in AA, and from people that I've talked to, from players that I've chatted with, everyone always talks about AA kind of being that big benchmark of like, okay, can you play or can you not play? That's where it really gets decided, is based on your performance there. And a lot of that is because you're going to see a ton of velo there and you're going to see a ton of spin. And if you can lay off the spin and if you can hit the velo, you're probably going to be able to hit in the big leagues, at least to an extent, right? Obviously, it's still a different game in the big leagues, as we all know. And Colt Keith is doing that. And I'm not trying to say that Colt Keith is guaranteed to be ready for the big leagues right now, because you never know how it's going to go. And guys get off to slow starts, guys struggle. Like we've seen it time and time again. I mean, look, Riley Green is starting to hit, pull side in the air for the first time in in his big league career, right? He's finally starting to do it. And it took him like 600 plate appearances to be able to do that. So I'm not saying it's just as simple as, oh, Colt Keith is ready, bring him up here, he's going to rake. The guy's 21. But the fact is he's making a lot of contact. His chase rate is like 13.3% coming into today. So he's not chasing, and he's making contact, and he knows how to hit velocity, and he's doing a hell of a lot of damage. His walk rate's above 5, 8.5. It's a solid walk rate. And yeah, I mean, look, the guy's a complete package as a hitter. There is no question that Colt Keith can hit. We saw it in spring training. We're seeing it now. I think it'd be crazy to bring him up only because we just haven't seen that with the Tigers in such a long time. But other teams have done it. Other teams have brought guys up from AA to the big leagues before. It's happened. If a guy's ready, a guy's ready. And dudes have done that, and they perform. I mean, look at the Atlanta Braves. They've called guys up from AA before, and they've just skipped over AAA. That's kind of the way that, the industry kind of views AAA sometimes is it's just AAA, right? And it's kind of like this in between where you're going to see a lot of guys who are veterans. I mean, look, you got guys like Matt Whistler in AAA, right? It's not the same as in AA where you have these premier prospects, and in the big leagues where you obviously have elite big league arms. So I think if Colt Keith is doing this in AA, he's got a shot to do it in the big leagues. It still feels crazy to talk about a potential call-up, but he's stating his case, either for a promotion or a call-up, because I'm kind of getting tired of seeing him wearing a Seawolves uniform. I think he needs to move along from that sometime soon.
All right, we're going to continue to talk about this. We're going to talk a little bit about how guys get called up and what's really doing well and how they kind of make decisions about who to bring up and who not to bring up. But first, we're going to take a break. We'll be back. All right, so we've taken a look at some data that's, a little bit proprietary because we're good snoops and extremely good detectives. Probably going to morph after we're done with baseball into being, like two Columbos, an old guy and a young guy, especially how handsome you are. It'll probably play well on TV. But we've also noticed that Colt Keith has some unusual qualities. He does strike out. Not a ton, though. I think under 20%. But he has also a pretty good capacity to not chase spin. And he covers almost all of the strike zone. Does seem to have some weaknesses on balls at the very bottom of the strike zone. He's going to obviously see a lot better spin and a lot better command if he came up here. But I think he's got some unusual skill set that might play a lot better than normal minor league guys that are on hot streaks in the major leagues. He's got the right swag, the right play coverage, the short swing, the punish mistakes. And, I don't normally advocate for these things, but I would be shocked if AJ, once he was presented with a lot of this data and they have a discussion about it, probably didn't advocate for this also. So, you've looked at...
Yeah, no, for me, it comes down to what is he doing against breaking balls? Like, that's what I want to know. What is he doing against breaking balls in the Eastern League, AA level? And he's been phenomenal. He's not chasing. It's an 11.3% chase rate against curveballs, sliders, and sweepers. And specifically against sliders and sweepers, it's a 9.8% chase rate. So he reads spin, he hits velocity, and he does damage. I don't really know what more you can ask for out of a player. And look, I wrote a story about him. Go on Google, look up Colt Keith, freep.com. You'll find the story. He's been compared to Joey Votto. He thinks like Conor McGregor, and he believes that he can be like the greatest baseball player of all time. That's just the swag that he has. It's the guy that he is. And he is like so humbly confident. And I think that's what you need in the big leagues. Now, again, that can tear you down real quick, as we've seen, right? It's a difficult game. It's a really difficult level. But if I'm betting on anybody to be able to withstand that and provide some production, I think it might be Colt Keith.
He reminds me a little bit of, with better plate discipline, better patience, but he reminds me a little bit of this guy. Bo Bichette.
Mm.
Bo Bichette plays, like an attacking middleweight. He's going up there to do damage and hack, and the ball, he just hits the ball over the damn field all the time. Not the greatest at drawing walks, but it's just an all-out 100% attack mode. And Colt Keith, in a lot of ways, kind of swings the bat like that. So if you're listening, front office, here's two people advocating for a call-up. Your offense is just dismal. I know it's a pretty big ask, and it's a pretty aggressive ask, but it's something we hope they'll give some consideration to. That's no knock against Justin Henry Malloy, excuse me. But, to be honest with you, I just think it's a better fit. I just think, Keith's a better hitter than Malloy.
And being able to hit lefties is huge, is it not?
I think it's pretty huge in this lineup right now because they're not hitting lefties too much. So
you know what it is to me, Mark? A calculated risk.
There you go. And whose famous saying is calculated risk?
Yeah, Scott Harris likes to use that one, or at least he did during the press conference.
Yeah, well, look, if they call up Colt Keith, the one negative about possibly, what may deter him, besides the fact that Kerry Carpenter is going to get healthy here soon, is Scott Harris might have to come out in the public and talk to the beat writers if they recall Colt Keith. And, so far, how many times has he interacted with the beat writers since spring training?
Once in spring training, once the day before the season, and then once during the season after the Spencer Turnbull stuff went down.
Okay. All right. So, anyway, I want to talk a little bit about Riley Green because, to be really blunt about it, as much as we love Riley Green, we were pretty hard on him for about a month. How many times he was rolling over, how ineffective he was to the pull side, how lacking in power he was to the right side of second base, how high the strikeout rate was. Seemed to be some swing flaws that needed to be addressed. And lo and behold, in the month of May, at least until Saturday and Sunday, one of the three hottest hitters in Major League Baseball for the month of May was Riley Green. Hit a ball Friday night. Don't know if it's come down yet. 162 feet in the air. He may not hit a ball higher in the air than that in his entire career. It was
40-degree launch angle too.
I think it was. What was the exit velocity on that? 112.
110.7 off the bat.
Okay, but Riley's hit for power this month. Got I think 5 or 6 doubles, and a couple of homers. Was hitting over 400 and basically just was a menace. So we'll see if he can pick it back up. He had some really horrible swings the last 2 days. I got to throw that in, but I'm sure Riley knows that better than we do. And, he wasn't going to hit 425 forever. But I want to give Riley kudos. Obviously has made a few swing tweaks. I know you've talked to him a little bit. I don't know if any better hitter likes talking about his swing less than Riley Green. So I know you're a pretty good detective. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah, no, he says he's feeling more confident and that's about it. But you can definitely tell if you watch some video and check out some things that he was doing, kind of in mid-April compared to what he's doing right now. I mean, you can tell that there are a few differences. I mean, the swing in and of itself is the same, but I think there looks like there's a little bit of a difference in kind of the setup and the stance at the plate. And I think those tweaks have probably helped him, tap into the optimal attack angle and to avoid a ton of ground balls. And really for the first time in his career, unlocked his pull side power that we're seeing. He took JV deep back at Comerica Park on a down and in pitch that, he's rolled over time and time and time again, and he hammered it over the right field wall. And then he does it again in Friday's game against the Nationals, where he gets this down and in sweeper from a righty, and he just hits this towering home run. And it's like, yep, like that's what Riley Green can do when he is getting the ball in the air to the pull side. And I think that's what kind of makes him, that all-star caliber player or that MVP caliber player, is hitting for power, getting the ball in the air, especially hitting the ball in the air to the pull side. Now, I do think one thing that he's been able to do that he deserves some credit for, and it's a really big data point, is Riley Green hit 254 with a 13.2% swing and miss rate on pitches inside the strike zone in April. So 254 on pitches inside the strike zone in April. In May, 415 with a 9.8% swing and miss rate on pitches inside the strike zone. So that's from 254 to 415. I think that's probably the biggest difference just from like the overall consistency that we've seen in terms of getting hits, getting on base, kind of being that guy that did what he did last year for a lot of the time that he was in the big leagues. But now we're starting to see the pull side power. And I think that just unlocks a whole new level of Riley Green and what he can do. So shout out to him. Swing changes or no swing changes, stance tweaks, the way that he's holding the bat, whatever it is, whether he's done it or he hasn't, he's doing what he needs to be doing. And he's carrying the Tigers right now. It's really impressive to watch, and I think the future is bright. I've said that all along, and he's proven it.
During May, I also saw that line drive rate was, 37%. Ground ball rate had dropped into the low 40s, which is kind of miraculous for him, for somebody that's career numbers well into the, 52, 53% ground ball rate.
No, very encouraging.
When he was struggling in April, it was closer to 60. Now it's in the low 40s. So all good signs. We'll see how long he can sustain it. The most fun part of Riley Green we haven't really seen too much lately, which is hitting the ball to the left side of second base for power. I've said that to you, and I've said it to other people who write for the Tigers. I would expect the next big breakout part of his game is to go back to hitting for power to center, left center. So he kind of talked to me about that. I mean, he said, naturally you're going to pull the ball, and he's not trying to pull the ball, but he says he's trying to hit the ball the other way because it helps him stay on the off-speed pitches and in the breakers. And he's going to kind of naturally pull it when it happens, but he's still like trying to go the other way. Like that's still his approach kind of over and over again. But the fact that he's able to adjust to pitches and hit him to the pull side, I think is encouraging. And he's taking his singles to left center field so far. You're right. Not doubles power in May, not homer power in May, but all that power is coming to the pull side to right field. And I got to tip the cap to him. No, I mean, again, like I was tough on him too. I was tough on him. You were tough on him. I mean, it's just the fact of the matter. We all know what the potential is, and now he's doing it. So I'm going to tip the cap to him there. And, I'll be patient with him in terms of getting back to hitting to the opposite field. I think that's kind of in the toolbox already. We don't need to do too deep a dive, but we should also tip our cap to Zach McKinstry, Jordan McKinstry, who is just an absolute ball of fire at the top of the order. I don't know how many games in a row he's led off getting on base, but it's some miraculous level of consecutive game streak doing that. And not to mention that he swung a really, really good bat. Always seems to be hitting the ball hard somewhere. And I think we have to tip our cap to Spencer Torkelson, who continues to grow as a hitter, using more of the field, really punishing mistakes, occasionally starting to elevate the baseball more now. I think he's 7th in the league in exit velocity. I had somebody tell me he had an exit velocity problem, and I said, well, yeah, there's 6 guys that are hitting the ball harder than him. Is that his problem? I did not get along well with Tiger baseball Twitter this week. I left a few bodies out there. I apologize I didn't feel good this week, and I was very mean, as I like to tell my friend Tiger Mike. Mean baseball Twitter mark is usually fun baseball Twitter mark, because I usually do have a lot of facts that I tend to spew when I'm being mean. But yeah, don't tell me that Spencer Torkelson has an exit velocity problem. If you do want to tell me that he is Paul Goldschmidt defensively, probably not a good thing for us to have a discussion about. If you want to tell me that his scooping is ridiculous and his ability to stretch and save bad throws is tremendous, I'll probably say yes. If you want to start discussing the rest of his defensive prowess, my answer to you is I would do a little research on that one, especially if they're paying you to have opinions. So,
hey, real quick too, though, Mark, back to one of the big questions that you asked me was just about winning consistently and can they keep this up if, they're maintaining this low strikeout rate, but also kind of a low walk rate too. And I mentioned the power and that being the next thing they need to tap into. And I put that on Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson. Obviously, it falls on the shoulders of Javier Baez and Eric Haas and some of the guys who can be power hitters in the lineup. But I still do think that that's like the next level for both these guys is like, can you do damage consistently over the fence? Can you drive in runs that way? And I guess that's kind of more of what I meant. I'm not as concerned about Riley and Spencer based on what I've seen in May, but the question is, can you sustain it? Can you have a couple 2-homer games? Can Javi Baez come in here and do some damage too? So I think there's some of that we're still waiting to see from really all three of those guys plus Eric Haas, but definitely some positive improvements all throughout May. It's been really fun to watch them work and watch them play. It kind of feels like this is what everyone's been waiting for.
So I also want to update everybody who thinks that Javier Baez is not a good defender and they're so mad at him for throwing the ball in the dirt all the time. I checked the leaderboard again, and even though he made 2 errors in one game, he's currently number 5 in outs above average in Major League Baseball at +5. He's number 2 for shortstops in Major League Baseball at +5. Trailing noted, shortstop defensive wizard Xander Bogaerts, who often has also been criticized for his defense or lack thereof. And it's just amazing when you have people studying every single play and using algorithms and data to try to figure out who's really catching the baseball and catch probability and what you're supposed to catch, what you're not, and how many times you do that. It's amazing who's really a good defender and who's not, which means catch the ones that are hit to you, catch a few times the balls that you're not supposed to catch, and they actually will, have data and supporting evidence as to who's a good defender and who's not.
But Mark, use the eye test too. Like, don't be stupid, right? Because you see Javier Baez and what he's able to do, and sure, he makes errors. Everybody has made an error, right? Like that happens. Guys make mistakes all the time. But look at how many plays that he makes that you say, yeah, nobody else can make that play. And that happens quite often on an almost a weekly basis, if not a couple times a week, maybe even 3, where he makes a play where you say, yeah, nobody else is making that play. Yeah, and that's the separator. Use the eye test.
How many times did you say OMG this weekend watching him play shortstop?
Right, it's ridiculous. I said maybe 3 times a week. Sometimes it feels like it's 3 times a game where he's making a play that, sure, he might make an error, but at the same time, he's making it 3 plays that nobody else is going to make. He's saving runs by doing that. Like that. That's Javier Baez in the eye test.
Tell me that wouldn't have been the double play of the season if he would have pulled it off there in the first inning today.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, Mark. It's ridiculous what he's able to do. I mean, just the awareness. Just the awareness is so on point across the board. Whether it's plays in the infield, whether it's going out and making the ridiculous catch that he had. I think it was Friday in the outfield when nobody could see the ball because they were coming in on the lights, and he was running back at it, and then just kind of stuck his glove out there and made the over-the-shoulder catch. And, I mean, you don't do that. Like, that's just not normal. Yeah, and that's normal for Javi Baez. So,
right.
Give him some credit, people.
He's, nothing less than been spectacular defensively so far at shortstop, in these first 40-plus games. Just tremendous. So, another player I wanted to touch on who has just been crazy great so far this season, and especially these last few weeks, is Alex Lang. So, I want to discuss he and Jason Foley a little bit more in depth, but we're going to take our last break. We'll be back in a second. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Alex Lang, and then I also want to touch on Jason Foley. And Foley was actually pretty fun today. I don't know, what you thought about the inning, but he got a little ticked off when the inning started with 2 straight hits, and I noticed the fastball seemed to gain a little life, and before you know it, it was a pretty easy double play and a few more fastballs of death. And
that's a sign of a confident reliever, though, is it not? I mean, when you're able to be in a situation where you give up back-to-back hits and, it's not Jason Foley of old where you wonder, is my stuff good enough? It's like, oh, shit, I'm better than that. Like, I'm about to attack the heck out of you. And that's what he did.
Listen, Jason Foley is so good now that he basically is, look, I'm blowing this right down the middle in the hitting zone. I don't think you can do anything with it. And
if you can, it's going to be a ground ball, and my guys are going to do their work.
Yeah, it's really something. But let's talk a little bit about Alex Lang, because I've noticed the last few outings he actually is starting to occasionally throw his fastball for strikes, and if he starts doing that, he may be illegal at that point. So, I mean, we got to do a little homework on what his batting average on his breaking ball is, but it's we can check Savant, but holy smokes, I just haven't seen anyone square anything. It's crazy. You
want it?
Yeah, give it to me. We're both good at this, but you take it from me.
Yeah, so it's going to be 175 against the curveball is what opponents are hitting, with only 2 extra base hits and 20 strikeouts. He's throwing that pitch 56.5% of the time. And it's got a 48.8% swing and miss rate. And he's getting a ton of strikeouts with it. Yep, I know. Nobody can hit it. The expected batting average is even lower, by the way. The expected batting average on it is 155. So the actual batting average is 175, and the expected is 155. Virtually no damage against it, though. I think that's probably even more important than the batting average.
I would say at this point, if he's going to continue anything reasonably close to what he's doing right now, he would almost be a guaranteed all-star. Would you agree?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, look, the guy's on fire. I mean, he's cooking. Like, there's, like, how much more can you say about what he's been able to do this season? I mean, he has a 0.98 ERA. He's got 8 saves. The walks and hits per innings pitch is low. He's got 25 strikeouts in 18 and a third inning. All the percentile rankings are pretty much off the charts outside of the walk rate. He's 96th percentile in expected batting average, 95th percentile in expected slug, 95th percentile in strikeout rate, 98th percentile in swing and miss rate. Fastball velocity is good. Chase rate's in the 86th percentile. And it's just flat out dominant. And he's getting outs. That's the thing that I think is the most important too. It's like he's got all that stuff and he's making it work, getting outs and winning games for the Tigers.
All right. Check Foley for me real quickly. We're going to do this in real time because it's also seemingly extremely impressive to say the least.
What do you need to know?
What are they hitting against the sinker?
What do you think they're hitting against the sinker? No, they're hitting 159 against the sinker.
Yeah. So
sinker, he's pumping the sinker in at 97 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it doesn't have a great swing and miss rate. That's the one thing that I think, like, that's the next level for Jason Foley. And you don't want to take too much away because, the ground ball rate is off the charts it's about 65% for the ground ball rate. I would like to see more swings and misses. And I think that's like the next level for him to potentially become a closer, is to really refine a slider. His slider only has a 8% swing and miss rate. It's going to have to be significantly higher than that if he wants to close down games and get swings and misses. But you can't complain with the production. Again, he's getting outs. I think that's what matters. It's a 1.42 ERA. He's got 2 saves. He's got 14 strikeouts in 19 innings and limiting hits, limiting walks. He's been a lot of fun to watch too.
Yeah, it's been something to watch Hinch and Fetter and Nieves build bullpens, and these two guys would be perfect examples of that. I mean, Lang's a converted starter. Foley always was a reliever, was a fringy reliever, always had struggled to get outs, struggled to command things, and they're about as dominant a 1-2 punch as there is in baseball right now. It's pretty amazing to watch.
It's so good. And for Alex Lang too, I mean, but look, Mark, the thing that's impressive about him is he has not allowed a run in 15 straight games. That's the longest active streak in the big leagues.
Yeah, you know what's impressive to me? They're both cheap and under team control for a long time.
I'm sure Scott Harris is happy about that as well.
I have ambitions of one day having a good baseball team, and the idea that we have two pieces that good are pretty exciting for me, to say the least. I took a look. We got some games against KC this week, followed by some games against the White Sox. Last year, I think KC kind of owned us last year, if I remember this correctly.
It was kind of middle. I mean, there were wins both ways.
So hopefully, KC's actually scored a decent amount of runs this year and has not pitched very well.
The Tigers actually went 10-9 against the Royals last season.
Chicago has been just a dumpster fire. That's just, there's not words to even describe how chaotically terrible they've been this year. Put it this way, they were better with Tony La Russa as their manager, and they were an inside joke with Tony La Russa managing. So you can only imagine how horrendous they've been so far this season. So I keep not trying to scout the schedule. I do hope the Tigers are going to play the same caliber baseball they've been playing recently and just hit the ball a little bit. I mean, when they hit the ball a little bit, typically it doesn't take much for them to win. And, just so many games that are empty and struggle with runners in scoring position. And hopefully we see a little more. And I wanted to ask you a couple things before we get out of here. Skubal's on his 7th bullpen. We talked about this a few weeks ago. I think they need or are about to let him probably throw a simulated game or two on the field just to let him throw to hitters. It's a totally different thing than throwing a bullpen. Once he does that once or twice, they're probably ready to at least consider sending him out for a rehab assignment. I'll be flabbergasted if he goes straight to Toledo. I would think much more likely he either goes to Lakeland or West Michigan to start. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's probably going to need a little tune-up there before he gets to Toledo, because it's going to be an inning, right? And maybe he might need 2 of those, where it's an inning for one start and then 2 innings for another start or something like that. We've seen the Tigers do that with guys before. Not really sure what what Scott Harris is going to want to do. I guess he's going to set the precedent here. With obviously a valuable pitcher in Skubal and how he wants to handle the rehab. He obviously set the precedent of having him, with Detroit at Comerica Park, during this season, right? As opposed to in the Al Avila era where guys would just go down to Lakeland and you wouldn't see him for forever. So some differences. We'll see how this one plays out. But yeah, Skubal's completed 7 bullpens. He's going to throw his 8th bullpen in Kansas City. Not sure if that's going to be to live hitters or not. Don't know if it's going to be like a live BP or if it's going to be just a regular old bullpen. Either way, he's making a lot of progress. He's throwing all of his pitches, and Tigers seem pretty encouraged by what he's doing. That's why he went with the team on the road. He came to D.C. to throw a bullpen, and like I said, he's going to be in Kansas City to throw another bullpen. So it means that he's getting to the point now where they're starting to get a little bit more aggressive with, his return to play and the fact that they want him throwing in front of Chris Fetter and Robin Lund. That's important for him with where he's at right now. And it's ultimately going to determine, how soon he'll be able to get out on a rehab assignment. But yeah, it's coming soon. I mean, and that means that Skubal's coming soon, which I'm sure is encouraging for the Tigers and Tigers fans. I'm not sure that it's encouraging for guys that are currently in the rotation because, well, someone's going to get the boot. But yeah, it's great for Skubal. He seems really encouraged, and a lot of his teammates are really pumped up for him too.
Kerry Carpenter.
Yeah, Kerry Carpenter with the team too on the road trip. So another, encouraging sign. He says he's making progress. He says he's feeling better. He's done some light throwing so far, but he's taking BP and stuff like that. So it seems like from a swinging standpoint, he's good. Like that kind of box has been checked. Last I heard, though, he was doing light throwing in DC here. So we'll see if he's able to progress even further in Kansas City and possibly get back. I know that would be a nice bat to have in the middle of the order again, because he can provide some pop and some much needed pop, because the Tigers basically have the worst power offense in baseball.
I'm sure that if he's going out on a rehab assignment, it'll be within the next week and probably needs to get 20, 25 at bats.
Definitely.
Before, so you're a couple weeks away on Kerry, Carpenter. So it'll be two big additions there. Lastly, looks like Pacheco had a setback. Wouldn't be shocked if he gets TJ. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, that was a guy that, the Tigers, when they picked him up off waivers from the Cardinals, he was injured and he had a right elbow injury, and he threw a bunch of bullpens and seemed like he was making progress, as the injury report, always likes to state. There's a lot of progress going on, right? Until there's not any progress. And so, reported, some right elbow soreness and injured again. So we'll see where that ends up going. But yeah, Freddie Pacheco hurt again. Completely nasty stuff when he's healthy. He's shown it in the minor leagues, hasn't pitched in the big leagues yet, but someone to definitely watch if he doesn't need TJ. But again, when you hurt your elbow twice and you're not able to get back, you probably need
Bo Brisky probably not looking great either.
Yeah, no, not looking great for Bo Brisky. Just another one to monitor in terms of, surgery, no surgery. Is he going to try to throw again? Is he not? Time will tell there. But he hasn't been around Detroit. He's been in Lakeland the whole time. So haven't kept, tabs on him too much other than just the injury report. But yeah, not good.
And last but not least, I think Matt Manning wouldn't be shocked if he threw a bullpen this week. Got to be coming up on that time.
Yeah, it's got to be getting close for him. That's someone I'm looking forward to checking back in with. He did not come on the trip, though, so he stayed back in Detroit. Him and Casey Mizer are in Detroit for the road trip. So once the Tigers get back to Detroit, I'm going to check in, and we'll see how he's doing.
All right, well, been an eventful show. Kind of another blah week. Let's see if we can get back into the winning. I appreciate you putting up with my sickness this week, but just want to tell everybody, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can always find us on the Free Press website. You can, any place you really listen to pods, Apple, Google, Android, Stitcher, Amazon, you name it, you can find us. Like I said, rate, share, and subscribe. A few comments, appreciate it. You can always find Evan Petzold at freep.com. He's there with multiple articles almost every day. I always has some good stuff going. I'd like to thank our executive producers, sports editor Kirk Crawford, our other executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, our regular producer, Robin Chan, and my grandson, RSV carrier, Braden Michael Gorash, who got everybody in his entire family sick this week. That's what happens when you're 2 years old. Evan's fiance, Savannah, thanks for taking good care of him. And I want to tell you, hopefully we'll see some good baseball. See you next week. Peace.